Hello everyone, it is I, TheLimeFilms here, and this is Link's Awakening 100% in 251.57. This is a glitched speedrun of the game, and 100% for Link's Awakening Switch means you have to get every single item that permanently affects Link's inventory. So this means collecting all 50 secret seashells, all 14 chamber stones, all 32 heart pieces, and all 9 heart containers. The run starts out pretty tame here. Most of the optimization in the early game comes from just moving with tight lines and doing what you can to go a little bit faster. There are damage boosts and shield bumps you can do to save some extra time, and I'll go over those once we get there. First off, we approach our first quote-unquote glitch. I think it's been ruled to not really be a glitch, but this is an animation cancel. It saves about 1.5 seconds or so. Normally Link stands there holding his sword out for a little while, but as you can see we flicked our shield by holding shield. There's also another glitch. Astute viewers might have noticed on the right side of the screen the Octorok was stuck inside the bushes. That's a bit rare. It does not happen every run, but it's common enough that I've seen it enough times not to be surprised anymore. Now, this is obviously a remake of the original Game Boy games of Link's Awakening, the Game Boy Link's Awakening and the Game Boy Color Link's Awakening DX. I think officially this is more of a remake of Link's Awakening DX, considering the inclusion of the Color Dungeon. But regardless, this remake adds a lot of new content. I think it's one of the better Zelda remakes, because it adds a lot of collectibles, and that makes 100% very, very fun. When I listed out the 100% requirements, you may have noticed that there are almost double the amount of seashells that the original games have, and very, very many more heart pieces as well. And one more heart container, which is a little bit strange, but we'll go over that later. Now, rupees are a very important part of this run. We're going to collect our first 50 rupee chest here. There are quite a few minigames that cost rupees for us to play, and we need to use them to purchase quite a few expensive things as well. You may be thinking that we can just steal everything, and while we can steal all the shop items, there are some unique items as well that we can't steal. So the beginning of the game is pretty normal. Somebody who's played the game a bunch of times and is attempting to complete it 100% might do some of the same stuff that we're doing here. Just go through, get the powder, get the rupees. But once we get to Dungeon 1, things are going to change quite a bit. There's our first shield bump. And there's another little optimization. If you hit both Terran in Tanuki mode and the bush at the same time, well, technically Terran first and then the bush, it'll disappear after you complete the cutscene. So you won't have to slash it, and it also blocks Terran from getting in your way most of the time. The owl is sort of a central figure in the plot of this game, so we're going to be seeing him quite a few times throughout the run, but we do actually end up avoiding a few of his speeches, not all. Our first collectible here is the well heart piece. I think this is probably one of the most commonly found secrets in the game. When I was a kid, I remember finding it in the Game Boy version and being super proud of myself, but there are quite a few more difficult things to find. So here's our first instance of the Trendy Game. It's quite a bit different from its Game Boy counterpart, and we're actually going to be revisiting the Trendy Game a few times during the run. Our final visit will actually be many, many visits as we get all of the figurines. This game added sort of souvenir figurines as part of a little side quest you can do. On this first visit, though, we're just going to be grabbing the Yoshi doll, which will allow us to start the trading quest, and we'll be grabbing the heart piece. About the trading quest, we do actually have a way of skipping all of the trading quest, and that is RNG manipulation. Normally, the trading quest is done so that you can read the dark book in the library and learn the egg pattern in order to traverse the depths of the egg. However, in our speedruns, we actually pre-manipulate our file to have a predetermined egg path. So any percent speedruns don't have to do the trading quest. For us, though, in 100%, there are actually a couple of seashells that are locked behind the trading quest. So you have to do certain items, and then a trader or a tradee will give you a secret seashell. So that was our first instance of stealing, and we'll be doing this quite a few times during the run. I think a total of 10 or 11 times. So get used to this dying animation. It'll get longer and longer each time as well as we get more hearts. Stealing is super, super nice in this game, though. If we weren't able to steal, it would be a much, much harder to route game. You would have to grind for a very long time on some minigames in order to get the rupees you need. There are a lot of expensive items in this game. And actually, that reminds me that I did have sort of a joke thought to do a deathless 100% run. So now we equip the shovel, which will allow us to dig up some secrets. Additionally, I do that menu inside because I feel that there's a little bit less menu lag. This game actually has a decent bit of menu lag. When you first open the menu, you have to wait for a tiny bit before you can start moving your cursor. So if it ever seems like I open a menu and I'm just not doing anything, it's on purpose. So now that we've completed the Mabe village chores that we can do right now, we're gonna head inside the first dungeon, Dungeon 1. Now, this speedrun's a little bit unique in that there aren't a lot of sequence breaks, but there are a lot of major skips inside our sort of normal route. Dungeon 1 actually will be one of the sequence breaks that we do. But a lot of the mid-game is I wouldn't say played as normal, but you know, the routing makes sense. You go from the 4th dungeon, or the 3rd dungeon to the 4th to the 5th, and all that. So I do a damage boost there from the spark. It's helpful, it saves a little bit of time, and also if the mini Moldorm there gets in your way, you're able to get iframes and go through him, and if you're on the left side of him, when you're opening the chest, when you use those iframes, it actually enables you to get a 2nd damage boost sometimes, but that's pretty rare. Here's our first 2D section. This game has a lot of these. We'll actually be avoiding quite a few of them, but they're part of what makes this game very charming. And now we get the Roc's Feather. No, Breath of the Wild was not the first Zelda game at all to allow you to jump on your own command. That would have to go to Link's Awakening. Or I guess Zelda 2 if you want to get all technical about it, but I don't think people generally like to talk about Zelda 2. So we are going to go a bit out of our way here to the training quest, and I am now realizing that I completely forgot to mention that, yeah, we just leave Dungeon 1 after getting the feather. So this is our first sort of sequence break in the run. Dungeon 1 actually has a couple of secret seashells that we're not able to get until we have some more items later. So if you've played this game before, you might be wondering how we're actually going to be able to progress with the story, considering we haven't beaten Dungeon 1, so we can't really access Dungeon 2. Or can we? Normally, once you beat Dungeon 1, it activates the Bow Wow is Missing quest. Since we haven't beaten Dungeon 1, we need an alternative method to enter Dungeon 2. And we're going to be using this Kuko just for that. I don't really want to spoil this trick, so I think I'll explain it afterward. We also get another seashell in these leaves here. So our first major glitch of the run, this is known as Bow Wow Skip. For us in 100% it's more of a Bow Wow delay, but this allows us to get into Dungeon 2 without having to complete Dungeon 1. The way it works is you have the chicken, the like sucks you up, and then it shoots Link out, it spits you out, and you rub against the chicken, and it sort of angles Link onto the trees. So Dungeon 2 is actually a dungeon that in any percent has gone through multiple major skips, but in 100% we've never and still don't really have any skips in here because we have to fight the genie boss in order to get the heart container. And both of the skips in this dungeon involve completely avoiding the genie or incapacitating the genie. There's the Dungeon 2 Hinox Warp, and we'll go more into detail about Hinox Warps once we actually use them in the run, but basically there's a trick where you use this little guy to warp you to the end of the dungeon. But that trick warps you right to the instrument and not to the boss, and when you're in the instrument room, the door closes behind you. And Genie Skip skips only the Genie fight, so the one part that 100% actually has to do is what gets skipped, so obviously we can't do that. I actually slightly messed up in this boo room here, but I'm glad that I did, because it's going to make it easier to grab this 5 rupees. These 5 rupees. Or I guess I could say this blue rupee. Now, having a high rupee count is good, because it allows me to skip that chest right there, which is a 20 rupee chest. After this dungeon, we're going to be purchasing Tracy's Medicine, which has a variable price. It either costs 28 rupees or 42 rupees. It costs 28 rupees if your kill count is even, and it costs 42 rupees if your kill count is odd. You can count your kills to actually not have to worry about collecting rupees and not have to worry about collecting that chest. But during this run, I completely forgot about that, because this was actually somewhat of a de-rust run for me. I was not expecting to get a big PB here. But luckily, I was fortunate enough to get a good amount of rupees anyway. So even if I got 42, I would still be able to purchase the medicine. So like I said before, we have to do this boss, which is a little bit of a bummer. For perspective, this dungeon takes about 5 minutes and 25 seconds-ish, and about a minute and 50 seconds of that is dedicated simply to this fight. Higher or lower, depending on how fast you go on the fight. While most of the fight is waiting, we do actually have a combat strategy that we're going to use on a couple other bosses as well, known as a double spin slash. Basically, when Link's sword is angled a certain way against an opponent, the sword's spin slash will actually hit the enemy twice in one rotation. This allows us to do quite a bit of damage, 4 damage instead of the normal 2 damage that a spin slash does. Because it's 2 times 2, right? That makes sense. So I get that double spin slash. Now I don't actually have to worry about getting a double spin slash at all, because Genie only requires 1 double spin slash in order to 2-cycle. And a 2-cycle is the fastest that you can do Genie. Don't think anybody's ever done a 1-cycle. Pretty sure that's not possible. Although maybe, I wonder if Genie gets hurt by arrows. Might be something to look into. Now Dungeon 2 is done. During a speedrun with live split, most runners split, and I split on when the text box for the instrument appears. And so this run, I think it was either 1858 or 1857, I wasn't really keeping track. Sub 19 is a pretty nice start for 100%. And I'm getting quite a bit of rupees to make up for that 20 rupee chest that I missed. Oh, and there's a Guardian Acorn. I guess I can explain the mechanics of Guardian Acorns and Piece of Power now. Guardian Acorn basically works such that every time you get 14 kills without taking damage, a Guardian Acorn will appear, and that will half the amount of damage you take from enemies. Why you get a damage-having item after not taking damage, who knows. There's also the Piece of Power, which increases the damage of your regular slashes and increases your speed very slightly. And that happens every 32 kills plus the amount of heart containers you have. Also just there, we grabbed Tracy's Medicine, which is an item that revives Link whenever he dies. No, that is not a safety strat. That will allow us to complete a trick much later into the run, about probably an hour and 50 minutes in from now. And it'll save us minutes, so we get it as soon as possible just because it's on the way. So we're going back to the shop, and this is one of the rare occasions where we're actually not going to be stealing. We're simply going to be good citizens and purchase 20 bombs from the shop. Should being a good citizen be associated with purchasing bombs? I don't know. I guess that's up to you. But bombs are a staple of the Zelda series, and they're also a staple of Zelda speedrunning, because they are very often one of the most broken items in Zelda games. And this game is no different. We're going to be using these bombs to do a wide variety of glitches, and actually, here's another major glitch. This one doesn't involve bombs. This is Villa Skip. Villa Skip allows us to skip Canalet Castle. Thinking about it, I don't really know why it's called Villa Skip, because you still enter Richard's villa? I think this is the villa area. I guess the villa is his house, so you skip entering his house. But it skips Canalet Castle, which is a very long side quest in which you grab 5 golden leaves and you give them back to Richard because his castle got taken over by a bunch of fierce enemies. But we don't have to bother with that because 5 golden leaves, they aren't a permanent addition to the inventory, so we don't really worry about that. And there are no items inside Canalet Castle that we have to grab. But yeah, there are a couple of items in the garden here. Oh, I actually messed up the jump, which is a little bit silly, but it's tighter than it looks, to be honest. You can make it from directly in front of the heart piece, but I find that it helps to go from the middle of the holes. But now we're going to enter Dungeon 3, and this will be our first example of major glitches within a dungeon. And every dungeon after this will actually have a glitch inside of it. Besides when we return to Dungeon 1. For some reason, as the dungeons get more difficult, that also influences how glitchy they are. So Dungeon 3 is a bit of a unique dungeon. Its gimmick relies around collecting a bunch of keys. I actually don't remember the name of the official dungeon. I think it is called the Key Cavern, but I don't quite remember whether that's a colloquial term or not. In that first room there, I actually did a bit of a menuing strategy. If you see the bombite move to the upright of the room, it's quicker to equip arrows instead of bombs immediately, so that you can shoot the bombite instead of walking all the way across the room and probably getting hit by the shrouded Stalfos along the way. So I mentioned that it's important to collect a lot of keys, and the glitchless speedrun ends up doing this. However, for us, we actually don't have to collect any more than that one in the beginning. Those 4 little key blocks aren't going to stop our powerful bombs. This is a trick known as a bomb loon. I honestly could not tell you how it works. I don't think anybody really understands how it works, but for some reason, when Link holds bombs and goes off certain ledges, he's able to just sort of levitate upwards. It's very, very strange. But it allows us to break quite a few dungeons here. So now we have the boots. The Pegasus boots are very, very nice, very refreshing after playing for 26 minutes with just walking speed. The boots are the fastest form of Link's movement. And I do a little screen reload there so that I can bring the Zols and Gels back to set up for another trick to get onto that fence on the other side, because I'm going to be doing a bomb jump, and if I didn't reload them, they would have loaded in at this screen right here when I re-entered from the Dodongo Snake's room, and that would have proved disastrous for throwing that bomb. So that was a good bomb jump. That trick is actually a lot easier than it looks, but it's still pretty frame tight. I just use a visual cue of the bomb flashing red, and then I charge and jump, and I get it most of the time. So now the dungeon's complete, we've done all the hard stuff, we just have to do the boss. Pretty easy. I think most casual players probably have a pretty easy time with this boss too, unless they can't really figure out the weakness. But yeah, you just slash his eye in the first phase 4 times. Oh, looks like I missed the first hit there. So yeah, you slash 4 times, and then you dash through, break him apart, beat him up, and now I'm at 1 heart, so I gotta be careful not to get hit here. Whoops. Okay, well that's rather unfortunate. So, at this point, I was actually debating resetting. Like I said earlier, we need the medicine for a trick, and now I've just lost it. So I'm gonna have to purchase it again later. And also, this Dungeon 3 was on cold pace, and then that itself lost, I think, around 8 seconds. So yeah, not looking good for a speedrun. I lost about 8 seconds there, and I'm gonna lose some more time later to rebuying the medicine. It's quite a silly mistake, quite a rare one. I actually can't remember the last time I died on that fight. Well, I guess right then and there. But now I'm going to buy the medicine again once I warp near Tracy's shop again. For now, we're just not going to worry about it. We're going to eliminate that from our minds and pretend it was a decent Dungeon 3. So we're not quite done with Dungeon 3 yet. Actually, we do have to re-enter, because like I said earlier, we need to collect quite a few rupees still, even though we steal. So we're going to collect a 300 rupee chest from that Stalfos room to the right. Those fancy jumps were not just for swag. The Stalfos are very much big trolls if you don't do specific setups sometimes. They can very easily dodge your attacks. They're quite agile, bony friends. I guess it holds true that the boniest people typically are the most agile. So you're going to see me stop my dashes in a few different ways during this run. There's the normal stop where I just sort of slow down. That is technically... So there's actually a bit of a debate between runners. There's jumping, there's that stopping, and there's slashing. Slashing is by far the slowest way to stop. It wastes 10 frames. Jumping wastes 3 frames from landing. And stopping is actually a bit of a variable. If you're going in a straight line, doing the normal stopping by flicking the stick in the other direction is slower than jumping. But most of the time you're not going in a straight line, you're going around curves, and so I find that I mostly prefer stopping by just flicking back on the stick. I think right there it might have been better to jump, but right there I think it was better to stop normally. Next up is a bit... okay, first I'm gonna bonk. Next up then is a cool overworld trick that I found when I first started running this category. You don't need the flippers to get the seashell, you can just sort of jump around the donut blocks. Initially it was believed that you had to jump from the bottom island to get that seashell without flippers. And that's a pixel perfect, I think frame perfect jump. It's very, very, very stupid. Not worth going for in runs at all. But I did find an alternative method that allows you to actually go for it. I guess fancy speedrunners would call it RTA viable. That spark is impossible to avoid. No matter how much I try and try and try, you always get hit on that first one. So segments like these are part of what makes 100% my favorite category. It's super unique. You get to do a lot of cool movement, like around these little holes there. And there's fun routing. Like, you get the stick there, and then you go around, and you get those seashells and the heart piece, and then you are already trading the stick to this guy, and then we're still going in a loop and getting more seashells, and it's a lot of fun. Also, this is the best cutscene in the game, by far. Terran is quite a doofus. So this room has a movement optimization that I actually messed up in this run. You can go in between the water and that Zero shark, but it's pretty tight. I always go for it because I'm silly. If you don't want to go for it, you can just jump over the Zero. And obviously that's faster than falling into the water or getting hit, but... I've got a pretty good idea of the position required, just didn't quite do it right this run. So it may seem like we're going quite a bit out of our way here to Animal Village, but activating this warp point will prove very, very helpful for later, and also we need to do the trade quest here anyway. So now that we've finished Dungeon 3, you may be wondering why we haven't really done anything to progress the Dungeon 4 plot. That's because we're actually going to head to Color Dungeon right now. Color Dungeon was a unique dungeon added in the DX version of the Game Boy games, the Game Boy Color release of Link's Awakening, and it is a dungeon focused around the theme of color. It allows you to get a pretty nice reward at the end. You choose what sort of tunic you want. In Link's Awakening DX, 100%. From what I've heard, it actually does not matter that much which tunic you pick. It's a matter of, like, just a small amount of seconds. But in this game, the red tunic is very much preferred. I did a marathon run one time, and I had a bid war between blue and red tunic, and blue won, and I realized that it is a lot slower than I thought. If those words are lost on you, I guess I should explain. The red tunic increases the amount of damage you do, and the blue tunic decreases the amount of damage you take. So this dungeon, despite its simple look, is actually deceptively difficult. There are 3 bosses, each with a unique quick kill. I actually mess up this one, but I get the other ones. And the movement is also very, very tough. Most of the rooms look very, very straightforward. But for instance, in that first room, where I had to kill those 3 ghosts, I actually had to do a specific movement to get them to pop out at a certain time. And we're going to be doing that again in a short while here. But yeah, you actually have to manipulate the time it takes for the ghosts to pop out by doing specific movement. So here's the next room. I activate those reds first, then this green, and I jump over, and I activate him. So that's a pretty quick way of doing the room. I think I've done it slightly faster before, but that's basically the ideal of what you want. So now comes the next boss of the color dungeon. This is Stone Golem. Despite his very wooden look, he is Stone Golem. I think it's kind of silly. But yeah, you have to spin slash him as you're falling down and make sure you don't get hit by rocks. If you mess up and wait too long to hit him, he'll start doing 2 shakes and releasing even more rocks, and it's just no fun at all. I hate messing up that fight. Luckily, we got it. It's a lot harder to recover a messed up fight there than it is to recover the other 2 fights. So this is the bingo room, which is actually probably the place where you can lose the most time when you're first learning this dungeon. Luckily, I got a pretty good room there. You basically want to avoid the little balls. I don't actually know what those guys are called, but you want to avoid them popping back out again of their shells, I guess. They look a bit like the robots in Star Wars Episode 3, the ones that attack the ships. That's what I always think of. So here's our final boss of the color dungeon, known as Chromaqual in German. I probably butchered that pronunciation. But in Japanese, I think in the Game Boy version, in Japanese, his name is D-Poon, which is a very strange name. But now we get our tunic. I don't know how to pronounce that either. Red tunic. Yeah. Now, there is actually sort of a common misconception about the red tunic. The red tunic does not increase the damage of all of your attacks. The red tunic simply increases your regular slashes damage. This is similar to how the Piece of Power works. If only the red tunic also made us move faster, like the Piece of Power. But yeah, the red tunic just increases the amount of damage your regular slashes do, which may seem like it's kind of minuscule, but it ends up helping quite a lot later on in the run. So we're going to do some more stealing here, nothing new. After we steal, we're going to do Dream Shrine, and that involves Link dreaming while he's inside the Windfish's dream, and also inside that dream, Link is able to collect 2 different items. It's a weird thing. I don't know. Link's OP. Nerf Link. And there we go, I got trolled by the Piece of Power, which does absolutely nothing for us with the red tunic. The Piece of Power and red tunic do not stack. I think I would actually be more annoyed if they did stack, because that means I might have to route them in at some point. But No, they do not stack, so it's pure time loss, especially now that we have boots and we're not walking anywhere. The speed upgrade doesn't help either. I guess it helps right there, but that's it. The thing about Piece of Power is it wastes 2 seconds to grab, and if you get Piece of Power and then walk for the maximum amount of distance that you can walk, you still end up losing like 0.2, I think. So it's still time loss, even if you get all the movement time save. Now we're back to Trendy Game, and it's time for the worst item of all time. The seashells in Trendy Game are notoriously difficult with 100% runners, and probably casual players as well. Now if I'm very lucky, I might be able to get... Oh my god! I'm sorry, I'm not a very good actor. Obviously I did this run, so I already know the results. Yeah, we got that seashell first try, which is a blessing from the Lord above. It is very, very rare to get that seashell first try, especially when you're 40 minutes into a run. I think average is actually like 3 tries. But it can go absolutely terribly. In fact, in my last PB, my 256, I had to leave and re-enter, and so I decided to leave and just do that seashell later. But we also get our first figurine. Luckily a very, very easy figurine to capture. There are going to be some very awkwardly shaped and difficult figurines later, but the first one, the Chow Chow figure, is quite easy, or the Schnoopstin figure. But yeah, now that we have done more Mabe Village chores, we can go back to Dungeon 1 again, and now that we have boots and bombs, our 2 B items, and bonks, so our 3 B features, we can finish Dungeon 1. So we start by just grabbing this key, and I have to say that this dungeon is quite goofy with boots. A lot of the rooms, I think, are sort of designed around you not having anything that makes you move fast. So a lot of the rooms are pretty small, and there's one giant room that's supposed to feel expansive to explore. But once we get there, it's going to feel a little bit silly, actually, because we're just going to run through the whole thing. And here is that big room again. But yeah, so you can see why it's better to return with a more upgraded item kit rather than doing this dungeon and then coming here. But yeah, see, we just dashed through this entire room when normally it's super, super slow. Now, one disappointing part is that I do really, really wish that the red tunic increased the damage of your spin slashes as well, because Moldorm ends up taking the same amount of time to fight with the red tunic as he does with the green tunic, because spin slashes with the green tunic still do 2 damage, so you hit him twice with the green tunic with 2 spin slashes. In this run, I think I use 1 spin slash and then 1 normal slash. I will say the fight is quite a bit easier because you are less at risk for being knocked into the voids in the corners. When you're holding sword out to release a spin slash, Moldorm can sort of just run into your sword and you're bonking and you can't do any inputs and you get forced into a corner, and it's very stupid and annoying, and this fight is annoying and it's annoying. Did I mention aggravating? I think I didn't mention aggravating. But yeah, that's D1 completed. A very, very fun dungeon with boots. And now that we've finished Color Dungeon and we've finished Dungeon 1, we're free to return to our main quest and start taking on Dungeon 4. So one benefit of doing D1 later as well is that you avoid that owl cutscene. You also avoid the ball-throwing boys' cutscene where they tell you that Bow Wow is missing. So you get to skip 2 cutscenes, which is quite nice. Octorok trolled me there. Oh well. This category is very nice because you get to enjoy a nice little date with Marin. Actually, a bit of a funny anecdote. You have to say yes here, but when I first started running this game, I actually thought it was optimal to say no and then yes. So I was actually losing a bunch of time each run. This was in like my first week of running the game though. So this is one of the 50 rupee chests that I think we can actually skip. A lot of getting good at 100% is sort of learning to do a bit of routing on the fly and eliminate rupee chests that you might not need as you collect stray rupees in the wild. So the desert is actually one of the most sealed and locked in areas in this game. It's actually one of the only areas that we really haven't found a way to get inside of through glitches. So we do have to do the Marin date in order to get in here. And we do have to get in here because there's a heart piece, 2 seashells, and the Dungeon 4 key. And based on the rules of the category, we have to get the keys, even if we have ways of skipping them. Here's Lanmola. Lanmola is annoying, as he is in every Zelda game that he makes an appearance in. It's possible to one-cycle him, but I half messed up and half got unlucky, so we had to settle for a 2-cycle there. It's a bit faster to just drop in and then pick up the key, because you get sort of the full movement speed as you're going down the pit, and you get the heart piece as well. So I've actually picked up quite a few blue rupees, more than usual this run. which has sort of helped recover my rupee count. I actually ended up finishing this run with a lot more rupees than I expected to, just because I performed very well on the minigames. If you don't perform so well, that's why you have the extra rupees. But now we get to learn Marin's song. Lots of Marin interaction here. Very beautiful. I like the parrot, or toucan, I guess toucan on the left. The toucan and the bear, definitely homies. Got a little hung up on the fence there, but that's not a big deal. This is a little bit of a skip. I don't know really what you would call this. I guess a movement technique. Normally, you might warp to Dampe to access the Dungeon 4 keyhole, but I found that it's actually a little bit quicker to just warp to the Seashell Mansion and then do a jump to that ladder. That is one crazy looking fish. Now, it's actually quite a bit faster to just run back rather than taking this warp, but since we need this warp later, it actually ends up being faster to grab it now. It's actually the only opportunity we get until we need to use it again. Like 2 hours from now. Not 2 hours, but an hour and a half or so. Small movement optimization, it's slightly faster to jump off the ladders because you're able to start your movement a bit quicker. This puzzle is nice. You can actually solve it just as I showed without having to enter and re-enter the staircase. I think when I played casually I did the staircase, but this room is probably the hardest room to do well, I feel, in terms of movement. I always mess it up. I don't think it's technically the hardest, but it's so easy to bonk in there like I did. That lost me quite a bit of time. I will say that's one of the things that I do enjoy quite a bit about 100% is it's quite a bit less frustrating to make those small 1-second mistakes because there are a lot more opportunities to get big minutes of time save. When I do any percent categories, I tend to get a bit neurotic about every little time save, and this, while intense in its own right, is intense for very different reasons. So now we're going to do our next bomb loon here in Dungeon 4. This one will levitate us to the top. And this allows us to get the boss key immediately, which is very, very nice for 100%, and very nice for other categories as well. We've sort of dramatically shortened the time that Dungeon 4 takes. Those 10 bombs weren't required, but I find it's good practice to still go for them, because you need them in basically every other category. And the jump is a little bit tight. So all we collect in Dungeon 4 are a boss key and a small key. The small key is simply so that we can fight the mini-boss Q-Ball, who allows us to get the flippers. I don't know why I walked around when I had iframes, but whatever. Q-Ball is an annoyingly tough fight. It's not super hard, but if you make a mistake, you lose a bunch of time. That was a perfect fight there. Normally you have to do a spin slash at the end, but because I have red tunic, I did not have to do that. So now we have the flippers, and we can go ahead and complete the dungeon. After Dungeon 4, there is a scripted ghost encounter, who actually prevents you from going inside any more dungeons. So for this reason, every other category waits until the end of the run to beat this dungeon. However, for us, for one thing, I don't think there's really any way to avoid getting the ghost in 100%. You would have to do some very, very silly routing that involves replacing the ghost with another companion. And additionally, the ghost gives us bottle that we need anyway, so it's much faster for us to just beat the dungeon now. So I'm going to be utilizing more double spin slashes here. It's not actually like super optimal. They don't help as much in 100%, the double spin slashes, since the regular slashes do so much damage on their own. But for me, it just helps in terms of getting the positioning of the anglerfish right. I've tried fights where I just spam, and oftentimes that leads to pushing the piranha killer, as he is known in German, all the way to the top of the screen, and it ends up being pretty sloppy and messy to fight him. But that was a very nice d4. There were only a couple small mistakes in there. Oh, and I suppose I completely neglected to mention the jump to the boss room that skips a small key as well. Immediately after completing the dungeon, we're going to go into this cave here and get Monbo's Mambo. Monbo's Mambo is a great song, and it allows you to warp to any warp point on the map. So, those who have played the Game Boy versions, but not this version, might be a little bit surprised by what I said, considering Monbo's Mambo is not that great of a song in the Game Boy games. It only sends you to Monbo's Pond, which is really not that fascinating. But for now, we're going to be continuing on with the trade quest. You can actually, if you're good at the game, just dash right into that door, but I messed up my movement a little bit, so I had to stop so I didn't bonk on the side, which I have also done a few times. So now we get Christine's letter, which we're going to deliver later. Made a little bit of a menuing mistake there. It's pretty tough to remember the specific movements for each map menu. It's faster to use D-pad. If you use the control stick, the cursor will slide around on the map, but if you use the D-pad, it'll instantly lock to whichever warp point is nearest to the direction you pressed. And so there, I think I did a left and then a down left, but my down left registered as just down, so that's why it sent me back to Animal Village, or Zoodorf in German. I think Zoodorf is probably where Ganon got the ending of his name from. This sort of melancholy cutscene is part of what makes Link's Awakening so enjoyable for me. There are a lot of these sort of heavier undertones throughout the game. And I think it's a pretty beautiful game in its own right once you get down to it. I actually missed the Zora there, so I had to dive under him. One time I had a very quick swim there because I jumped and I landed on the back of the Zora, so I got a very nice damage boost. This neat little secret pathway will allow us to get another heart piece that I actually missed barely, and it will lead us to our first of 3 capacity upgrades. The capacity upgrades in this game are really good because there's only one, and it doubles the amount of each capacity that you have, and it refills whatever you're upgrading, which proves just absolutely amazing for routing. If we did not get this, we would have to pick up quite a few extra bomb refills. So now we warp to Mambo's Pond, and this is actually where I will be rebuying the medicine. Which is slightly embarrassing for my splits, because it makes a segment that's usually pretty consistent quite a bit longer than it normally might be. Oh well. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes, or however Reddit says it. So now we're gonna finish up the Ghost side quest. Bring, I think it's officially a boy ghost, but I guess it doesn't really matter. Bring them to their final resting place, where they will reward you with a bottle. And while bottles are super useful in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, they kind of suck in this game. We do not use them for anything. Actually, are bottles even that good in Majora's Mask? I think they are, but not as good as Ocarina of Time. I don't quite remember. So we're just gonna discover some more secret items, get our seashells, get a heart piece. Actually, wait. Yeah, the heart piece is later, but get 2 seashells and then get a heart piece. We get a nice push cancel there, which is a little trick that allows you to immediately start moving after pushing a block. It saves about 0.4 seconds if you do it manually with the shield, but it's frame perfect, so it's not really worth going for. There it's automatic. If you take damage, it'll automatically push cancel you, so it's worth it there. If you were to do all of the push cancels in the first split of the game, you would end up saving somewhere around 2 seconds, but it's 5 frame perfect tricks to save 2 seconds, which it's not really worth it, especially without a good visual indicator or anything. If there was a good visual or audio cue, I might consider going for it, but it's basically just muscle memory, and frame perfect muscle memory is not the most reliable thing to go off of. So now that we've gotten all of our collectibles, we can enter Dungeon 5. This dungeon is fun, but also really annoying. There are quite a few RNG rooms in here, specifically this first room can lose you quite a few seconds to an optimal pattern. And the boss of this dungeon is a coin flip on whether or not you get to attack. I think there's a way of doing it so that it becomes a 75% instead, but I don't really know that method, and it's a bit harder than I'm willing to go for, I think. I don't know. Maybe at this point, now that I've gotten a good run, I'll start going for it. So this dungeon is slightly repetitive. I missed... Oh my god, okay. I forgot how bad that room was. Normally should be super quick with the red mail, but oh well. So this dungeon's a bit repetitive. This is Master Stalfos, and you fight him 4 times, which is kind of a lot. Got hit there, which lost us a second, probably. It's a little bit hard because every time I practice this, most of the time when I'm doing Dungeon 5, I have the green tunic, so the knockback dealt to Master Stalfos is quite a bit lower. So it's a little bit harder for me to adjust. Usually I don't get hit, though. By my own bombs, I mean. Oh wow. That time I just ran directly into it, huh? Yeah, so I lost probably maybe 2.5 seconds, maybe more, from both of those fights. But all in all, that's not too bad, considering in my PB I lost, I think, 40 seconds. Also nice double blue. I think I lost about 40 seconds to this dungeon because I messed up the glitch that we do here. Any percent is able to skip this dungeon completely. And actually, I suppose I should mention that there is a new trick that was discovered, not super recently, but recently enough that there really isn't a good setup for it. And there's a trick that would save about 1.5 minutes in this category. I think 1:40 was the final decided time. It saves about 30 seconds in any percent, this new version. But the trick that we're about to do is known as Hookshot Rocket, and it involves picking up a bomb while the hookshot falls onto your head so that the hookshot and the bomb collide, and when that happens, the hookshot launches into the air and it takes you with it, and then you are on the walls, and then you, in any percent, you walk to the end of the dungeon and you're done. You just have to come back for hookshot. in this category, since we have to fight the boss, and since that doesn't give us the hook shot, we just use this trick to get to the boss key early, which getting to the boss key this method is faster than getting the hook shot immediately. It's better to delay the hook shot and get the boss key rather than get the hook shot and delay the boss key. Wait, what did I just say? I don't know. Hopefully you understand what I mean. I think I tripped over my own words there, but yeah. So now we have to go back and get the hook shot because we used it to do that trick. As I was saying earlier, there's a new method that allows you to take the hook shot with you in return for I think 10 seconds of extra setup time. I think less. I think it's 7 seconds of extra setup time if you do it quickly. And that is very good because it would allow us to skip needing the boss key in 100%. We would just take the hookshot with us onto the walls, grab it, get onto the walls, and then immediately fight the boss. Fortunately, that's just not the way things are headed right now. That trick is... I think it's the hardest trick in the game, period. And I think the runners of this game have... Everybody who's tried the trick, I think, has come to a consensus that it's pretty much not really RTA viable. However, I have a friend, Snow Miser, 2nd place in 100%, who has actually been grinding out the trick quite a bit. I think he'll start going for it in runs, because he has about I think a 40% success rate with it, which is way, way higher than anybody else has, and if you hit it second try, it still ends up... I think it only loses a little bit if you hit it second try. So this will end up becoming a reset point, but it's worth it, probably, to get that extra minute and a half, and I'm scared because I might start having to go for it as well. So this is Schleimer, Slimiel. This is one of the most annoying bosses in the game. Luckily, I got the 1 cycle. The way I do this fight is I just hope for him to spawn on the left side. Some people just hope for him to spawn on the bottom. Some people just hope for him to spawn on the top, and some people just hope for him to spawn on the right side. I think it's all basically preference. One of those patterns probably doesn't work because of the tail RNG, or not RNG, the tail pattern. For me, left side has just always worked, so I do left side. And that fight is why the red tunic is super, super good. If we didn't have the red tunic, we would actually want to route out a piece of power to fight that boss, which is very annoying. It's what Glitchless has to do. If you don't have a damage boosting item or tunic, whatever, that fight is impossible to 1 cycle, and it means you have to deal with even more RNG. Alright, so now it's time to enter D6, and along with entering Dungeon 6, it's also time to finally rescue Bow Wow from captivity. It took us kind of a while, but this ends up being the fastest time to rescue Bow Wow. It also ends up being the best time because we're able to just leave this area. There are certain times where the flags are set such that if you rescue Bow Wow, you'll get soft-locked upon leaving this cave, and so you have to mambo away, which loses some time. But at the point in the run that we do Bow Wow, and actually I walk here because usually Bow Wow runs at you, but of course Bow Wow trolls me, and will be trolling me quite a lot throughout this run. Anyway, we're able to just auto-load. Wait, did I never discuss auto-loading? Hello, I am a terrible commentator. Okay, auto-loading is a mechanic in this game. It's basically just a fancy name for a simple concept. It's just loading your autosave. But yeah, so we've now rescued Bow Wow, who will provide almost no assistance to us during this run. Oh look, he's telling me where the seashell is because I missed it. What a helpful guy. Some runners really like Bow Wow, they think he's cute. I am not a big fan. A lot of times I have bonked on Bow Wow, and I think glitchless runners also tend to not like Bow Wow because sometimes he gets very moody and refuses to eat the flowers that you need him to eat to get into Dungeon 2 in glitchless. So yeah, this split is actually, I think, the longest chore-based split in the run. That blue repeat was completely unnecessary to grab. But I grabbed it anyway. Bow Wow's just, I don't know, Bow Wow's just a bit of a silly fool. I actually had it, I think at one time I've had a pattern where Bow Wow completely blocked my hookshot here. You do a nice little down right angle there to get back. And I had one time where Bow Wow was just completely in the way. So Bow Wow just randomly can decide to turn your speedrun into a Let's Play. This is actually the end of the trading sequence here. Once we do this trading item, we're actually going to skip to the end of the trading quest by doing a trick known as Early Lens, which was in the very, very old any % route. But yeah, trading that letter, we did Christine's trade for her, and she's very pleased that we managed to catfish this guy into thinking that a very respectable goat lady is actually Princess Peach from the hit Mario series. He's absolutely smitten. She's presumably getting some money or something. I don't know. There's some dark undertones in this game sometimes. Maybe she's just embarrassed and shy, and maybe when they actually meet in real life, you know, he'll realize and he'll be like, it's fine. I love you for who you are on the inside. I don't know. Now we're done with Mysterious Forest. That's the end of Mysterious Forest. We're done. We're leaving. Goodbye. Not coming back. Now we go to Animal Village, and as part of the 100% requirements, we have to get the Dungeon 6 dungeon key, but also we don't really have a way to get into Dungeon 6 anyway. There is a way to get into Dungeon 6 with the Rooster, but unfortunately, in order to get the Rooster, you need to beat Dungeon 6, so we have a bit of a dilemma there. If we had some way of getting the Rooster before beating Dungeon 6, the route would be absolutely crazy, for one thing. And it would also mean that we don't have to get this key here. In terms of any percent. In 100% you have to grab the keys. Which always kind of trips me up. When I first started running this category, I was actually kind of into the idea of not including the keys anymore, but I've grown to understand that having a consistent roll set is good, actually. But yeah, we're just going to collect some seashells here. There's a hidden one in what is known as the Armos Maze here that we're also going to grab. This is quite a fun area to move around in when you don't have to worry about health like you do in 100%, or like you don't in 100%. In any percent, you have 5 hearts here. In any percent no Hinox Warp, you have 4 hearts, and the Armos do 2 hearts of damage to you, and the boss that gives you the key does 1 heart, and it's very scary, so you have to be on your best behavior. You have to try not to get hit by the Armos. I actually missed that arrow there, but it's pretty irrelevant. So this area Bow Wow actually tends to help out a bit by taking care of the Zols. How did I bonk there? What the hell? Okay. That's very strange. Normally, when you're going around a curve like that, excuse my voice crack, normally when you're going around a curve like that, Link will just sort of manage to not get owned by the curve. I missed my last arrow there, wow. This fight is also pretty frustrating sometimes. this boss has a stupid amount of invincibility frames while jumping and coming back from the jump, so it can be pretty annoying to deal with him if you mess up the pattern. Luckily, I recovered pretty well there. So this will be our last set of chores before we go to Dungeon 6. Wow, it happened again. That is fascinating. So this was actually a pretty bad split. I think I ended up losing around 6 seconds in my PB. Oh, and look, Bow Wow trolled me. That's awesome. But yeah, a lot of that was to Bow Wow trolling and the bonks. So we'll be doing our last collectible chores here. This heart piece in the moat in the original games did not have any sort of outline. I forget the intended way that you're supposed to know that that heart piece is there. I think maybe if you do stuff with the photographs. Also, as a side tangent, I wish they added photographs in this game as well. Anyway, I think maybe it's something with the photographs that tells you the heart piece is there. Now, there is a task strat for this seashell, a task 100% strat, where the autosave that gets created after grabbing that seashell. In this game, there's one frame after you load into the game, if you're in water, where you can use items. So if you load your autosave, within that one frame, or sorry, if you use an item within one frame of loading that autosave, you can Mambo to Seashell Mansion. And the reason why I say it's a task strat is because it saves a total of 1 second to do that frame perfect trick. So it's definitely not worth it to go for in runs, but see what I mean there? See, like, I went around that corner, but the other ones just did not let me pass. Oh well. Silly game. So now it's time for Dungeons. So now it's time for Dungeon 6. This used to be one of the longest dungeons in the game. But over the course of a few months, we kept finding new and newer glitches that just absolutely tore this dungeon to shreds. First, the glitch route was always just like, it was a pretty vanilla route that involved, like, I think a small key skip or two. And then we graduated to Dodongo skip, which was a pretty hard trick. It used to be task only, then they made it RTA viable. And so we started doing Dodongo skip and runs, and then I think very soon after Dodongo skip, not very soon, but decently soon after Dodongo skip, we found the trick that we use now. And it's quite a silly one. I don't really want to spoil it, so I think I'll refrain from explaining it until after we get there. For now, enjoy the Dungeon 6 gameplay here. Pretty crazy, huh? So that's another one of our bomb loons. This one's pretty unique in that you just float up a staircase for some reason. I I also did a small time save strat to skip the screen transitions there. Unfortunately, I miscounted and had one extra there. But yeah, that strat makes Dungeon 6 very, very quick. It's only about 2.5 minutes long in any percent categories where you don't have to fight the boss. And that's part of what makes it so fast, is that you get to skip the boss. Previously, all of our D6 tricks still required us to fight this very long boss. But in 100%, we get to fight this guy, and he's actually a very, very fun boss. This is Facade. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the German name. And the way that Facade works is very, very unique. He gets influenced by the way you move around the screen, and you use a nice little strat here to damage him with his room tiles. I was barely early there, and then I ended up falling in. So this is actually a very, very bad Facade fight. But I did get to utilize a cool little recovery strat. Normally Facade doesn't take damage if he's more than one tile away from a wall, but if he's in front of the door extends the hitbox of the bomb arrow. So if you shoot the door, you'll still do damage to Facade. So this was a really good D6 in terms of the trick execution. I got the trick first try, and all the movement was decent enough, but the Facade fight went a bit sloppy, but what are you gonna do? So now that we've beaten Dungeon 6, you might think that we're gonna go to Dungeon 7. Well, if you think that, you'd be wrong. We're actually gonna do Dungeon 8 and then Dungeon 7. Which has sort of always been a staple in the glitched Link's Awakening runs. Very strange menu there. Ever since the discovery of what is known as Flame Cave Skip, we've basically just always been doing Dungeon 8 before Dungeon 7. It provides a much more direct route than normal, and it also allows for you to skip quite a few cutscenes. In Glitchless, you avoid a cutscene, actually, by doing Dungeon 7 first, of course, and then you do half of Dungeon 7, and then you do Dungeon 8, and then you finish Dungeon 7, just so you can avoid a few cutscenes. But in this run, we simply use Flame Cave Skip, and that allows us to sort of destroy the endgame. We're going to be getting Rooster here after we get Frog Song. We'll revive Rooster, and Rooster sort of completely breaks the overworld movement. There are quite a few glitches that you can do really easily with the Rooster. Notably, the ones that we use are the air climb, the no clip, and what's known as cock rock walk. A bit of an immature name, but it is basically just a glitch that allows you to it allows you to walk on some rocks that you normally would not be able to. So this is Frog Song, the best song in the game. I think what's most fascinating about this song is whenever people complain about it, I feel like they have completely different reasons from each other as to why they don't like it. Some people say that the singing is bad, but the melody is good. Some people say that the singing is good, but the melody is bad. Some people say that specifically the two little frogs are terrible singers, but Wart is a good singer. And then I've heard some people say that Wart is a terrible singer, but the two frogs are good singers. It's quite funny. I actually enjoy the song. I don't know if that's just like an inherent contrarianism of mine, but I don't know. I've never had a problem with it. I guess it's supposed to be intentionally bad, but I'm not quite musically talented or rhythmically talented at all to really identify why it's bad. So now we're getting Rooster, and Rooster is going to replace Bow Wow, as Link can only ever have one companion at a time, and this eliminates our need to return Bow Wow. And now it's time for fishing. This is the most egregiously RNG-based part of the run. You have to catch an orange fish, a Cheep Cheep of suitable size, such that it gives you a heart piece and a seashell. You have to catch a blooper that's over 100 centimeters, and you have to catch a big blue fish known as Old Baron, that is over 150 centimeters. The reason we have these centimeter requirements is because if they are not big enough, then they'll actually just not give you the reward you need, and you'll have to catch it again. So this Cheep Cheep right here, I thought was big enough to get me the heart piece for some reason. Looking back, I don't really know why I went for this Cheep Cheep. It's very, very small. Normally you want to go for a bigger one. I think it's either 45 or 50 is the heart piece requirement. I think it's 50, and that one was 43. I accidentally said yes and wasted 10 rupees there. So it is fine though, we did get the Cheep Cheep, so... And green fish are much more common, and green fish are the other thing that can give you that 50 centimeter heart piece. I immediately get a big enough blooper though, which is very nice. I was very pleased to see that. So the reason this is very RNG based, one, you need to get the right size, but also you have to actually get the proper fish. And I think the possible percentage chance for Old Baron to appear is 20%. So you need the big blue fish to appear, which is only 20% of the time. And you need it to be 150 centimeters or over, which is only 50% of the time. So it's pretty rare to get a big enough one. And whenever you see this white light, it means there's a special fish in the pond. So that Cheep Cheep is big enough to give me the heart piece, but also this green fish is big enough. And for some reason, this specific spot right below Link provides automatic catches. So I decided I'd rather just go for the green fish, even though it's going to give me an extra animation of giving me the middleweight lure. The lures are not required for 100% because they do not modify your inventory. But yeah, this guy, definitely big enough to give me the heart piece. And you may notice that we do actually have Old Baron at the bottom of the pond, but he's not quite big enough for us, so we're gonna avoid catching him for now. So this is probably the silly part of doing 100%. And I actually ended up reaching a pretty rare percent chance. I haven't exactly counted these, but I think it's over 10 reloads, maybe. And the percent chance that you get everything by the time that you do this is very, very high. I just got super unlucky. I equipped the heavyweight lure there, which I normally don't do immediately. I usually check the pond first and then equip the lure, but this time I was like, I need to just go for all the time save that I can reasonably get, because this fishing is on pace to be really bad unless I get a really quick catch here. That was sort of the silver lining to this fishing. All of the fish were caught super quickly. So even though it took me a million attempts to get this old Baron, when it really shouldn't have taken me this long, I got a much quicker catch than normal. It's pretty random. I don't know the exact, like, probabilities of the fish resisting or whatever. But yeah, we got a good catch there. That one was 159 actually, which is quite a bit bigger than normal. It caps out at 170, but I think I've only ever seen one get even close to that. I have seen a very, very humongous Cheep Cheep though. But yeah, the total odds of getting all the fish that you need in one single pond. Also, the bottle is pretty annoying to try and get here, but if you're careful, it's good. The key thing with learning to fish the bottle is just having patience. You really can't rush it. Anyway, the chance of getting a first pond fishing is 0.29%, so it's gonna be a while before any 100% run gets that. But a 100% run that gets that, or close to that, is bound to save a lot of time on this run. That fishing segment was 9 minutes and 40 seconds, starting from the text box after Dungeon 6, which is about 40 seconds off of my gold, which, while not perfect, I was very pleased to have not lost more time, because it's very possible for fishing to go absolutely terribly and for you to lose minutes there. So the fact I only lost 40 seconds, actually more than 40 seconds, but 40 seconds to my gold, I was very pleased. So now we're doing a trick called Early Lens. I mentioned earlier that the lens is required casually to read the book, but it also is required to get a seashell and to get the boomerang, so we very much need it. That was kind of an awkward menu. But yeah, the magnifying lens is gonna allow us to get a couple items that we need. So even though we don't really need to finish the rest of the trading quest, we do still have to get the lens. So now we go to this Sora, who tells us about Goria the trader on the beach, who we can also now see with the lens. Yeah. Taronga Strand, which is the beach area. I equipped Marin's song, which may seem a bit unconventional, but it's actually required for a seashell here. She thanks us. She says "danke" for dunk. I think it's just dunk. I don't know. Dunk. I don't know. For delivering her letter, her catfish letter. Anyway, now we talk to the walrus, and we get a seashell. He thinks we're Marin, and then he realizes we're not Marin, and he spits out a seashell at us. Don't really understand the context behind that seashell, and I think the existence of that seashell probably eluded many casual playthroughs, but oh well. I tried to throw the rooster behind me, but I pressed A bit too early there. I've tried many times to make that menu a little bit more flashy. I feel like I'm able to save a menu there, but every time I've tried to math it out and execute it, it always ends up being the same amount of menus, if not more. So here's Gorilla. Give him the bow, and he gives us the boomerang. And the boomerang completely sucks in comparison to the bow, so we're gonna buy the bow back. It's a little bit silly, but it's required for 100%, so we have to get it. The boomerang was actually super, super good in the Game Boy version. But they nerfed it a lot in this remake for some reason. The boomerang was super cool because it one-shot Death Eye. But in this, it does less damage than the bow does, which is very silly. So we're going to do our first air climb, oh wait, no, our second air climb of the run. I forgot about early lens. This allows us to get this heart piece really quickly and easily. And now we're going to do our second, God, I can't get this right. Our third air climb. And this is Flame Cave Skip. I got it first try here. It's not too hard of a trick, but if your muscle memory on it is a little bit messed up, it can be pretty easy to mess up. And now we're doing D8 backdoor. I guess this counts as a rooster no clip. I didn't mean to pick up that bomb, by the way, but I think that actually ended up saving the run, because looking back at the footage, I think that bomb was too far down for that to work. But yeah, we do a bunch of fancy stuff there, and then we spawn here, and then the rooster floats us up to the bridge, and yeah. Now we enter D8, we skip the Turtle Rock fight, and we get a heart piece for free. Wow! For some reason I jumped there. Don't think it's faster to jump, but oh well. So now that we're in Dungeon 8, we're going to warp immediately back to the beginning, and we're going to see our first instance of a very game-breaking glitch known as a Hinox warp. This glitch allows you to skip over entire dungeons. In 100%, we're going to use it just to get the magic rod immediately, and then we're actually not going to use the second one. The old route was to do this Hinox warp, and then do a second Hinox warp, and then beat the boss, but I actually found that me along with Snowmiser, we found that it's faster to just do this first Hinox warp and then do the no Hinox warp glitches strat, which involves doing a bomb loon to get onto the walls to get to the boss room. So this was third try Hinox warp, which is not great, but it's a frame perfect trick at 60 FPS, and that one specifically doesn't have the most amazing visual cue of all time, so I was decently happy with third try there. And so now we're just going to traverse the walls. This allows us to skip the Blano fight, it allows us to skip 2 small keys, and we get the magic rod right away. I accidentally went a little bit far right there, which scared me a lot, but ended up being okay. So we get the magic rod, and now I'm going to do the no Hinox warp trick here, which is actually pretty cool. It ends up being kind of a cool route. Okay, I missed the first jump, that's fine. Okay, I missed the second jump, that's fine again. Alright, there we go. Okay, I missed the third jump, that's cool as well. Okay, the fourth jump. Okay, so this is turning out to be a bit of a disaster. Losing quite a bit of time, and I think I probably got a little bit tilted here. I don't know if I'd say tilted, I think I got nervous. I don't remember being mad, but I definitely got nervous when I messed up a bunch of times there. Yeah, this specific bomb loon is super cool. We do a cool little strat here to get into the blocks. And then we jump onto the wall, line up so that we don't fall off. If your lineup isn't precise there. You can just fall off the wall immediately when you screen transition. We have to jump over those stairs or else you bonk and it's ruined. And then we do this, and we just jump into the boss room. Easy peasy, go into the boss room, go down a little bit. Oh, uh-oh, looks like I'm stuck. Just go down a little bit, man. Oh, he went up. Don't go up, go down. Oh, okay. Well, I screwed up, and then I got I got a little bit upset, so I collected all of those because I thought I was going to reset. And then I decided to continue. This is definitely the biggest mistake of the run. I lost about a minute and a half to this mistake. So now all I had to hope for was that I could just hit the Hinox warp immediately. And it turns out I am better at the harder strat. I don't know why, I'm kind of silly, but whatever, it's fine. I think the key thing I can blame there is a lack of practice. Again, this was meant to be sort of a de-rust run. So when I messed up on that no Hinox warp trick, also this fight is super annoying. I messed up, but whatever. So when I messed up on that trick, it was mostly because, not really the execution itself. The execution itself, I think I lost like 20, maybe 15 seconds or so to trying to get that trick at the start there, and falling a bunch of times for no reason. But falling off at the end there was just because I haven't really done that method of the trick. In No Hinox Warp, obviously you don't want to fight the boss, you just go immediately to the instrument. So I don't know, I just got a little bit messed up. I think the nerves too were kicking in there. But yeah, I lost a minute and a half to my gold, which actually ended up only being about 30 seconds to my PB. Funnily enough, because my PB also had a bad Dungeon 8. Apparently I can't get a good Dungeon 8 or Dungeon 3 in a good run. Oh well. As a result of doing that trick to skip Turtle Rock, the game waits for exactly 7 seconds there. It's like hard programmed into the game to wait for 7 seconds for some reason when the rooster is behind there. So this is Cock Rock Walk. You don't have to get all the warps in this game either, as they're not part of the inventory. Would be a little bit silly if you did have to get all the warps. I do know that Twilight Princess gets all of them. But really it's like 5 extra seconds of gameplay as you get that warp and like one other that's right near there as well. So I think as a community we just sort of decided against it. I also got those 50 rupees there, which I ended up not needing. I think a big part of the time save later on is going to end up being skipping a lot more of these rupee chests. This is our final capacity upgrade. We get powder, which is useless except for one case. One little enemy we gotta fight. So there's an example of a no clip. There's a slightly faster version than the one I did there, but that ended up working anyway. I also messed up there. I meant to jump down to get back in bounds, but instead I just jumped more out of bounds. It was weird. But I still got the jump back in bounds first try, so not a huge deal. So that seashell, since we don't want to wait for the animation, we run away from it desperately. I suppose I could make the joke, oh no, I forgot the seashell. But yeah, we simply run back to collect it later. It's slightly faster. That time I jumped because the rooster was in the way, so it helped to avoid some potential time loss. And here's a cool little movement optimization. This is a YOLO jump. Not really a YOLO, I get it every time, but if you mess up, you fall down and you lose probably 45 seconds, I think, in this category. You lose a lot more time in any percent categories where you don't get rid of the waterfall in front of D4. In those categories, if you fall down, you just have to reset back to after you beat Dungeon 8, and it ends up losing, I think, 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes? I don't quite remember. Alright, so we're going to do some more air climbs here. This one will allow us to get to the Dungeon 7 warp, which we'll need very shortly. I know I just said that all the warps aren't required, but this one we're actually going to use pretty soon. So we're about to see sort of the true power of air climbs. It's pretty ridiculous what you can do with this trick. We're going to use it to just sort of descend across a very big chunk of the map. And it's going to allow us to actually get inside the rafting game early. Well, not early. It allows us to get inside the rafting game without a raft. And this allows us to collect the heart piece and seashell that are located here very, very quickly and easily. Unfortunately, the rooster's a little bit of a troll. It is faster to hover with the rooster rather than swim through the rapids. So now, at this point in the run, I think we have 46 seashells? We have 44. My bad. So we're actually going to be getting 4 out of 5 of our seashell rewards, because the 4th reward is the level 2 sword, the... I forget exactly what it's called. But yeah, we get the level 2 sword here, and that allows us to do 1 more damage. So all of our attacks do 3 damage, which is quite a lot, and it's going to help us save a bunch of time later on in this run when we do Dampe. While I'm collecting all these rewards, I think I'm going to take this time to do a more detailed explanation on Hinox warps, because we're about to do a pretty big one to skip all of Dungeon 7. Hinox warps as a glitch, basically, the way they work is whenever the Hinox grabs a Link, what's actually happening is Link is teleporting to the Hinox's hand. So whatever position Link is in, the Hinox grabs you. If you're in the grab range, you are teleported to the Hinox's hand, so he can then throw you. If you interrupt this grabbing animation on, like, the frame he grabs you, whether that be through falling through a hole, taking damage, doing an attack if you're able to, I think was one way of getting it to work as well, then you get what's known as Hinox warp. Most of the time, it doesn't really do anything. You'll just void out for a little bit, and then you'll respawn right in front of the Hinox again. But in very specific pixels, on very specific frames, you can actually get some pretty crazy results. And the first instance of this glitch was posted on Reddit. A game clip somebody posted, they completely accidentally got the glitch. In a 1 in 1 billion chance, they got the glitch, and it warped them to the end of this dungeon here. And so everybody in the speedrun community freaked out. It took them, I think, 2 months. It's either 1 or 2 months to even come up with a setup that comes close to what that person pulled off accidentally. And it's a much different setup than what that person did. I got the first try skew shot here. I think I forgot to talk about skews earlier in Dungeon 5. Skewing Link's angle, basically, as you hopefully probably have already noticed by now, Link only moves in 8 directions. But when jumping, Link is... Okay, I don't know how I messed that up. But when jumping, Link's angle is able to be manipulated much further into being basically any 360-degree direction. And the developers did not think you would be able to do this, so it allows for you to do some pretty minor skips. None of them are major. The D5 one saves a small key. In this dungeon, it actually does save quite a bit of time, because it allows you to immediately get to the Hinox. So I tried to improvise a strat here by hitting myself with bomb arrows while I'm going to the Hinox, and it just did not go well. We have to grind our health down, because for this Hinox warp, instead of choosing to take damage or get interrupted by a hole on the frame that the Hinox hits us, we are choosing to die. And so dying with the medicine actually allows for a range of frames to work. So this Hinox warp is technically easier than the Dungeon 8 Hinox warp that's only 1 frame, because there are multiple frames that work. The problem is there isn't really as much of a visual cue. So for this one, I do a specific setup that gives me 3 frames to hit the trick. And those 3 frames all send me to the boss room. In regular any percent, you also have 3 frames to hit the trick. 2 of those frames send you to the boss room, and 1 of those frames send you to the instrument room. Obviously, in 100%, we have to beat the boss. So getting the instrument room is really bad. And before EDL told me about this setup that gives you 3 boss room frames, I had a number of runs that died to getting the instrument room, which was very, very silly. So the eagle fight's pretty easy. I actually got very lucky there. I only got 1 gust. Before the gusts were a huge time loss, but we actually learned from the Japanese runners. We watched their runs, and we found out that they were able to cancel the gust animation by going onto the ladder and going back up. I thought I got into the door, but I guess I didn't. But yeah, that's Dungeon 7. Much, much quicker than it normally would take. Takes a very, very long time without the Hinox warp. And we got it first try as well, which is nice. It's a 3-frame trick, so it's not super, super hard, but again, it is a 60 FPS game, so it's still a tight window. So now that we've done Dungeon 7, you may be thinking that basically everything's done. I mean, how do you have another hour left of the run? Well, to answer that question, we've got a lot of minigames to do. But we're actually not going to be doing those minigames just yet. We're actually going to beat the game first and then do those minigames, which sounds very, very weird, but unfortunately, there's exactly 1 item locked behind beating the game and creating a save after the credits. So you have to watch the credits in this run, and I'm very, very sorry that you have to do that, but it's just part of the run. Simple as. It's part of the 100% requirements, we gotta do it. I actually have thought about doing a route of max % pre-credits, or like 100% no chamber stones. I don't know, some sort of silly title like that. So that the run actually ends with beating the boss, the final boss. But as of right now, the final boss is actually only about 2/3 of the way into the run. A nice fun little thing for me to make credits more fun rather than just sitting for 5 minutes is I actually have a segment that times my credits time. You might think that's kind of asinine, but I don't know, I think it's kind of cool to time my mashing. It keeps me focused and attentive for the 2 little spots at the end of those 5 minutes where you have to mash. Or beginning and end of those 5-minute credits. And also, at least the credits aren't much longer. You know, there's some games where the credits are like 10 minutes. So as I mentioned earlier, we don't have to read the book because we RNG manipulated our egg pattern to be a specific pattern. I am currently using what is believed to be the most optimal pattern. It has a nice little nickname, Rulu, which stands for the actual pattern. It's right, up, left, up, 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 up. So it's good because most of your movement here is just going to be up, and it's very quick, you just dash right through. Makes for a nice pattern. For a while, when this game was first being run, people, before RNG Manip was found, people did a super permutation of 100 possible egg patterns. So instead of reading the book, they decided they wanted to skip the trade quest and instead test their luck right at the end. Luckily, that phase did not last for very long. At least I never had to deal with it by the time I started running the game. But yeah, that ended up... You could end up losing a lot of time at the very end if you got a pattern that was very, very far into the permutation. So there is a strat to avoid getting hit by these blue balls here, but since we have a million hearts, I just choose to try and go for the insta-kills by swiping as vigorously as I can. Or I guess furiously. This is Aghanim. Aghanim works very, very similarly to how he works in A Link to the Past. In this game, he shoots either an orange ball or a blue ball. The very first ball is always orange, and then there's a 50-50 chance of getting either an orange or a blue ball. And you can only have one given pattern 3 times in a row. So you can only have 3 orange in a row or 3 blue in a row. So the max blue balls you can get is 9, and the minimum blue balls you can get is 1. I decided to go for triples here, which I have never really practiced. But there's a little technique for saving a cycle on Death Eye here by getting 2 triple shots, but I ended up missing all my opportunities, so I had to settle for doing double shots for the last ones. But yeah, not a perfect nightmare fight, but good enough. I think I got 3 blue balls there. which is decent. 3 blue balls is still in the expected range. You have about a 75% chance of getting 3 or under, and then everything above 3 is more unlikely. But yeah, so that's Nightmare beaten in 205. Now we have to deal with credits, which is slightly silly. But I don't know. It is kind of nice to have a good break point in the run. Because from this point on, there are going to be 0 cutscenes. It's going to be non-stop gameplay, non-stop minigame action. And even though I'm saying minigame, and I'm making them sound easy and trivial, they're actually kind of the most intense part of the run, and also the hardest. So yeah, you save the hardest for the end. Pretty awesome. Feel free to just skip through the credits. I don't think I have too much to explain here. I'd rather explain things as they come up. Is there anything I should clarify that I didn't touch on earlier? Talked about skews, talked about skip. Dungeon 8, Dungeon 5, Dungeon 4. No, I think we're good. This run is improvable, but this endgame is going to show part of why I think it's a really good run. Worthy of having its own special commentated video, instead of just being a run that doesn't have any commentary. So I'm actually going to take a break myself. I'll be back by the end of credits to explain more about the run. I'll see you then. Alright, so remember that warp I said we'd need later? We finally get to use it. So now we're going to begin rafting, which is a pretty easy minigame. It's the easiest of the minigames, but it's still pretty fun to try and get your time lower. A good time for rafting in an RTS setting is probably a mid to high 23 second. I think all of my rafting times this run were pretty bad. I think I got like a 24 and then a 25 and then a 26. Which is not great, but I still saved a bunch of time over my PB because I got flickback when I was trying to menu on this exact menu, and I accidentally clicked Schnapshellen, which is Rapids Raid instead of Rapids Race, and Rapids Raid does not give you anything good at all besides those collectible item, or not collectible, well I guess collectible, those pickups that we passed when we came here with the rooster earlier. But yeah, this minigame basically just comprises of, it was almost 23, just using hookshot wherever you can to go a little bit faster. And the very nice thing about this minigame is that you get your rupees back after winning. So you don't really have to worry about your rupee count, otherwise we would have to get a lot more rupees during the run. And you actually get 300 rupees once you eat up all the rewards, but that's not really useful for us. It's probably useful in a deathless 100% run. I think this is the minigame you would grind in order to avoid stealing from the shop. So you get a heart piece, and then a seashell, and then you get a chamber stone. Each one is a reward for a different increment, but obviously since we go super fast speedrun mode, we are always under that limit. I think 40 seconds is the heart piece reward, 35 seconds is the seashell reward, and 30 seconds is the chamber stone reward. I've never really even gotten close to failing. I think the worst I've gotten in a run was like 27, maybe? It's a pretty simple maze, to be honest. See, I even missed the hookshot twice, and I still got a 26. Maybe I got a 28 one time. But yeah, it's definitely one where once you practice it a few times, you're not likely to fail. But it still happens when you get flickback on the menus. It's super silly, but oh well. At least it didn't happen this run. I tried to do a dash there for some reason. Just silly movement. Alright, so that's our last overworld heart piece. The rest will be achieved from the Trendy Game and from Dampe. So the Trendy Game, we talked about Trendy very early on in the run. Around 10 minutes and around 40 minutes were our first two trips to Trendy. Now we're going to be doing a bunch of trips after we steal 5 chamber stones here. While I do this whole stealing process, I'll start to explain the Trendy Game. Trendy Game gives you a chamber stone as a reward. So it's always been a part of the 100% definition. However, as part of a community agreement, you also have to place the very last Bow Wow figurine. So it's sort of implicitly you also have to place all of the figurines, because in order to place the Bow Wow one, you have to place all the other ones. And the Bow Wow one is also the one that gets you the Chamber Stone, and the Bow Wow one is also the one that's locked behind credits. It's a little bit silly, but it's just part of the run. And I'm glad that we do Trendy, because there's actually a lot of skill in getting each of the figurines. Each one has a different setup you have to do. And if you do it right, most of the time they should stay in there, but you can still get unlucky and have terrible, horrible things happen. Most notably with the seashells. We got one of the seashells earlier, luckily. And we'll be getting the second one very soon. Yeah, Trendy allows us to get a Chamber Stone, Heart Piece, and Seashell, and then all the figurines, which allows us to get a Chamber Stone. I think I'm just about finishing up Chamber Stones here. I actually haven't been counting while commentating, but that should be the last one. Okay, one more then. Alright, so now we're done with shopping, and now we get to do Trendy Game. This is honestly a pretty fun part of the run. I think a couple of my 100% compatriots don't really care for this, but to me it's part of what makes the run so unique and enjoyable. And I'm looking forward to doing this again next run. But yeah, there are a lot of cool setups I have that tend to work pretty well. Most of them revolve around going to that middle spot in between the last two tiles. You can see there's a dark square and a light square, and a line that divides them all the way to the right. And so using that pattern as a visual reference, I am able to get basically all of the figurines from that position. I just adjust my timing based on the figurine. And what's good about that position specifically is that it also allows you to grab the left side item in a very, very similar cycle. I think, well, I guess I could say in the same cycle. You have to do basically no waiting at all. You just grab one thing after the other. And that's part of the optimization in this category, is not just doing the minigames correctly, but also doing them quickly. Specifically in Dampe later, building the dungeons quickly is going to save us a lot of time. So we grab this heart piece. This heart piece has actually caused me problems before. Most of the time, it's a very, very easy member of the Trendy Guild, but it definitely has caused me difficulties before. I will not deny that. I will point out whenever we get to a tougher trendy object. In fact, our next visit will actually have arguably the hardest one in it, which is the second seashell. I actually think the second seashell is not nearly as hard as the first one. I have a pretty decent setup for it, but when it fails, it loses you a bunch of time. Pretty much every time you fail this specific seashell, it will almost always land in a spot where you're incapable of grabbing it, just based on sort of the location of where you're grabbing it from, which is the left moving platform. If it moves to the left, you can't move the pincer thing to the left at all. You can only move it to the right and up. So I don't know why I saw my dash there. I think I did that on accident. So if it goes to the left at all, you end up getting super screwed, and you have to leave and re-enter, and all the setups are kind of messed up, and it's just not a fun time. Boo is, not ironically, I guess, the easiest figurine to grab, in my opinion. I've never had Boo fail. Because Boo just sort of... Boo is very light and big, so he aligns himself with the pincer and also doesn't fall out of the pincer. So here's the seashell. Let's see if we get it. First try, very, very good. When that happened in my run, I popped off a little bit because I knew I already had about a minute of time save from my last run needing to get an extra seashell here that I neglected to get earlier because it was causing me a lot of problems. So getting that also saved a bunch of time on my PB because I think I messed up on that. Got it like second or third try or something. Because it's not always... you know, you have to leave and re-enter. Sometimes it does go to the right or just down a bit, and you're able to re-grab it. Up next are going to be a couple of easy ones. We've got the Cheep and the Blooper, but after them it's going to get quite a bit harder again. In fact, I actually used to think that the Blooper was one of the hardest figurines to grab, but I've gotten way, way better. I have a much better setup for it. I used to use a setup that basically never worked. It worked like 20% of the time, but for some reason I was going for it in runs because I was somewhat insolent, I guess. But now I've developed a better setup, and I think I stole some of the setups from Glan? I'm not sure. I can't remember whether Glan and I have similar setups or different setups. But I do remember watching Glan's Trendy Game at one point for a while. Glan is a glitchless 100% runner. I actually started going to the wrong area there. That's the rust showing. Glan and M-Chan, both glitchless 100% runners. We don't have a separate glitchless category, and they still perform very well for doing the run without glitches. That's pretty commendable. I want to try out... They've actually inspired me to want to try out glitchless 100% at some point. Definitely not anytime soon, but when I can, I want to give it a shot. But yeah, it's very impressive the times they were able to get. And a big part of that time save comes from doing these minigames well. This category's inception, a lot of runners lost time to this because it wasn't really fully understood. In fact, some runners actually did fishing at the end of the run, along with all these figurines that we're grabbing. You know, they did it as part of the post-game quest, and obviously that is not fun when you can lose up to minutes just on RNG with fishing. I think it wasn't really understood what caused the specific fish to appear. Now we know that it is, I think D4 gets you Cheep, D5 gets you Blooper, and D6 gets you Old Baron, but I might have some of those mixed up. Shy Guy is deceptively difficult. Shy Guy used to always go well for me, and then about a year ago I started having some troubles with him. You can see how he kind of spazzes out once he's in the crane. He's a pretty oversized figurine, which causes those difficulties, but got him first try this run, which is very nice. But yeah, he's one of the figurines you kind of want to worry about, because if your positioning's a little bit off, and I think, in fact, if your positioning is too perfect, it might actually be worse for Shy Guy. But I don't really have anything to substantiate that claim. Next up is Piranha Plant. Another one that I used to think was hard, but I developed a better setup, and so now Piranha is pretty easy. Piranha being so good is part of why it's hard and part of why it's easy. It makes it easy because it'll pretty much always hit the conveyor belt once you bring it over there. even if you get something like this pattern right here that I got, where the piranha is dipped all the way out to the other side, because it's so big, it'll just pop right back in. But yeah, I was slightly worried during this run because I was like, what if that doesn't work? Normally what you kind of want to see there is grabbing the piranha and it's just directly vertical. But it doesn't matter that much. I think even when you get a weird result like I just did there, it'll pretty much always work. Next up is Pokey, also deceptively difficult because it's not on the moving platform. Pokey, honestly, I kind of just YOLO. Sometimes he freaks out and doesn't work properly, and then sometimes he goes perfectly like he did this run. The truly devilish thing about Pokey is that if the base of Pokey is stuck on the conveyor belt, then you can't grab him. Just, if half of his body is on the conveyor belt and the other half isn't, the other half is in the prize box, it doesn't matter. You just can't grab him. Very different from the other figurines, and also very annoying. But luckily we got Pokey first try, and now begins the other arguably most difficult, don't know how I bonked there. The other arguably most difficult trendy object. This is Bow Wow. Bow Wow is big and circular, too big for the crane, so what happens a lot of the time with 100% runners is we get Bow Wow in the crane, we're like, okay, we can get it first try. So I had good timing there, and I'm like, okay. I get him in the crane, I'm like, okay, I can get him first try. And so just take a look at Bow Wow's behavior here. It's pretty insane how much he pushes it out. And he got very, very, very close to falling out. But we got Bow Wow first try, and this whole Trendy Game segment is why I think this run is especially good. I had essentially perfect Trendy. Every single object in Trendy was first try. Every seashell was first try, the heart pieces were first try, the chamber stone was first try, and every single figurine was first try. Which is pretty nuts. And I actually checked my inventory there. That may seem like an accident, but that was on purpose because this golded by a minute. And I was suspicious that I might not have actually stolen all the chamber stones. I was like, wait, did I do something wrong? But nope, that split was just that good. And it's kind of what makes this run amazing. But Dampe also has something to say about this run being amazing, so we'll start Dampe. So Dampe has a lot of rewards. As you can see, we don't even have the 2 remaining heart containers for our heart bar. Dampe gives us 2 heart pieces, and wait, no, he gives us 1 heart piece. Wait, no, does he? No, he does give us 2, sorry. Tripping up on my own thoughts here. Dampe gives you 2 heart pieces, and he gives you a heart container, which is pretty nuts. The kind of interesting thing about Dampe is it's basically like all menuing. Because the dungeons you create are obviously intentionally easy, a big part of the time saves and time losses here are from building the dungeons. But, see, here's the big but, a long time ago, I actually discovered that you're able to do Hinox warps in Dampe. So those crazy glitches we saw earlier that allowed us to skip all of Dungeon 8 and all of Dungeon 7, well, almost all of Dungeon 8 and almost all of Dungeon 7, we're actually able to do these in Dampe dungeons, and so they allow us to complete a lot of the challenges much quicker than we normally would have been able to. These tricks save minutes in the route, And it's how I got my first 100% record, which admittedly I probably should have gotten by a lot more, but for being an inexperienced runner of the game, it was a really good showcase of how powerful these glitches were. I got a 3:13:22. The previous record was 3:15:20 by Samurai Man, and it was I'd been running the game for about 5 months, and I was still really bad. I was about like, I think I had just turned 15 when I got the record. So I was young, inexperienced, immature, not great. I actually have a bit of a funny anecdote, considering about one of the records that I got during that age, but I'll refrain from telling it in this super ultra professional setting. Anyway, Dampe Hinox warps play a super big part in your time loss and time save now here. You have to do 5 frame perfect tricks, well, 4 frame perfect tricks actually. One of the Hinox warps is actually pretty simple and easy, thanks to Snow Miser. It previously was pixel perfect, and so in my previous record I did this pixel perfect setup that Snow Miser had created, and I got first try, and I was super happy. But now Snow Miser has found a new setup for page 2. Specifically, this is page 2-3, page 2, chamber 3. And now it's one of the easiest Hinox warps, but it is a 50-50 RNG chance whether you get it or not. But yeah, we've got quite a few Hinox warps to do here, on page 2 and 3. Page 1 has no Hinox warps because all the dungeons are so quick and easy to do that it doesn't really matter anyway. Page 1 doesn't provide as many innovative challenges for you to sort of design, so it's not really as, so the Hinox warps aren't really needed at all here. I'm decently satisfied with how my building went with page 1 here. Like I said earlier, building really is sort of the crux of getting good at Dampe. Sort of weaning off of using the Dampe tutorials is how you're gonna save time as you become more experienced in 100%. But I will say that my building gets a little bit shaky toward the end, just because I got nervous and I was rusty, and it wasn't great. Don't PB on derust runs, kids. It's not a good look. So here's the last part of page 1 before we start doing our crazy glitches. This one looks like it's a lot of building. You have to fill up all the tiles, by the way. Looks like it's a lot of building, but compared to some of these later ones, it's really not going to be that much. I actually mess up building here too, for some reason. So silly. I forgot to put that chamber in. But yeah, this 6-minute split here is just all menuing, so that's why it's pretty nice to get a gold here. Unfortunately, I actually lost my gold because of this fight right here. This silly little Moldorm fight that usually only takes 2 hits. I accidentally ran in, and then pathetic. I would have golded by about 2 seconds, I think. Instead, I choked really hard. That's what happens when you're rusty. So here's page 2-1. We get our first example of a Dampe Hinox warp. And So as you can see, I'm pretty liberal with the chambers that I'm placing in terms of chests. Before Dampe Hinox warps, you would want as few chests as possible to make traversing the dungeon a lot easier. Also, as you can see, my building is a bit more rough around here. It's one of the improvable parts of this record. My building overall was not super amazing. But there's our Hinox. Gonna help us warp. The thing is, though, the reason why it is a little bit more sloppy doing my menuing there is because if you have one discrepancy in your chamber, also first try, nice. If you have one discrepancy in your chamber, it can actually cause the Hinox warp to fail sometimes. Most of the time, if you mess up, I think you're fine, but it makes you end up relying on RNG. And so the way I have the dungeons built is so that you don't have to rely on RNG, as far as I know. But yeah, I was pretty nervous this run about messing up the building phase, and then having the... Sorry, excuse my voice crack. Having the actual run go to waste, because I would try so hard to build it correctly and then build it incorrectly, and it would be all for naught. The building here actually went better than expected. It's surprisingly, despite being a bigger dungeon, it's one of the simpler designs because it sort of just kind of works out logically. That's another thing with the Hinox warp dungeons is it's not really super logical which rooms are which, it's just whichever ones allow the setup to work, so you can't really rely on intuition at all. And my rote memory skills are not the greatest. I tend to over-rely on intuition. But now it's time for 2-3, the one I was talking about that Snow Miser found. Honestly, I'm so thankful for Snow Miser. He's such a good pal, and I'm really that I have somebody who's about as passionate for 100% as I am. He actually is the one who motivated me to come back to this category, to get this run. So he came up with the initial Pixel Perfect 2-3 setup, and while I say Pixel Perfect, there was a pretty good visual cue, so it wasn't like extremely hard to get, but it was pretty tough. I don't know why, for some reason I just lingered on that screen for so long. I messed up here. This is really the building that I'm most embarrassed about, because this one actually does work pretty logically. But I don't know, I failed pretty hard here. Anyway. Yeah, I don't know, for some reason I got like really nervous doing this, because I did not want it to fail. Because this was actually the first time I did the new setup. And see, look, I replaced that. I probably didn't have to replace that, but I did it anyway. This is the first time I did the new setup that Snow Miser came up with. I didn't practice it a single time. So instead of the Pixel Perfect setup, you do it like this. And it just works. Somehow it just works. You shoot him, bonk against the wall, and then hold upright and shoot again, and it just works, folks. I missed my bomb arrow, though, and that was kind of a disastrous fight there. In the initial setup video, I actually noticed that I messed up there. In the initial setup video, he holds shield while walking to that hole. Luckily, apparently it still works if you don't hold shield, so there you go. Thank God. Alright, now here's the final of page 2. We do one more Dampe Hinox warp here. This one is more similar to the one that we did on 2.1, and the rest of them will actually be mostly similar to the one on 2.1. I'm also disappointed about my building here. See, there are still like lots of little things I can improve with my PB. And big things too, actually. Like, I lingered on the eye screen there because I knew I needed it, but for some reason I still just didn't place it. Just kind of silly mistakes like that. About to put the D as well. Oh, and the way the Dampe guide works is each section is sort of numerically, or sorry, alphabetically categorized. So whenever I say D or whatever, I'm referring to a specific page. I was actually nervous this would fail because I didn't rub up all the way on that right wall there, but boom, first try again. So all the page 2 Hinox warps were first try, so even though the building was sloppy, I golded by a minute here, which also is a very, very good part of the run. I'm a little bit disappointed in my building. I should have practiced Dampe more before this run, but I was like, yeah, you know, it'll be good practice to do it in the run. Always practice. That's my advice for you young speedrunners out there. Practice, practice, practice. Practice is God item. And see, like here, this dungeon is super easy to build as well, but I just... so many silly mistakes. It's fine. I think my building overall is still decent enough, especially considering the more important part, actually hitting the frame perfect tricks, was good. I would much rather take, you know, first try Hinox warps over building faster and getting like 5th try or something. So the first 2 dungeons here in page 3 actually are very build heavy, because there are a lot of tiles you have to place, and you actually don't do any Hinox warps for these first 2, but the very last 2 you do Hinox warps for. The very last 2 Dampe dungeons you do, the very last 2 things you do in the run require you to hit a frame perfect trick. It's pretty nerve-wracking. This one, I think, is the part that I'm most embarrassed about having in the record. I went very slow on this building phase. In fact, I think I was actually pretty much just reading the guide as I did it, because of how much I forgot. Which, you pretty much don't want to do. When I was in my prime, a while ago, I don't know, actually, I guess this technically counts as my prime, but when I was running this game, this category a while ago, I actually ended up, God, see, like, look at how slow this is. Okay, anyway, I practiced the building a lot, and it did me a lot of good, and I really think if I want to go for record again, I've definitely got to do that. I mean, just look at this. Oh, so silly. I'm just so lost for some reason. Just can't do it. Just, loads of time lost here. We get our final bottle. Our third most useless item. It's a little bit silly. It's like the bottom row of the inventory in this game is just dedicated to the trash items. You get the boomerang and the 3 bottles, and you use all of those 0 times. This building went better than, comparatively, than the other ones, but it's also probably the easiest dungeon to build, just because there are very few tiles, and it operates super logically. Obviously certain things have to be correct here, because again, it is precise requirements for the Hinox warp to work. So here's 3-3. This one is particularly hard because you have to do it without a sword, and the sword provides the best visual cue for this trick, so it ends up being mostly on timing. And as you can see there, I went super early. Or maybe you can't really tell. But basically, whenever you take damage to your own bomb arrow, that means you went early, and if you get grabbed by the Hinox, it means you went late. As you can see again, I went early. So I started to get a little bit nervous once I missed it the second try. I was like, okay, this is not good. In my PB, I got both of the Hinox warps first try. And then I missed it again, and I was like, okay, I'm going super early. I need to just, like, wait a little bit. Just be more patient. So I waited a little bit too long. I was exactly a frame late there, which is pretty frustrating. And then I bonked. I rubbed against the wall still. And here we go, attempt number 5. Can we do it? Can we do it? And there we go, 5th try. Pretty silly time loss, having 4 extra tries there, but it happens. And now it's time for the final chamber. Gotta build it and complete it. Let's see how we do. So this building was mostly fine, except for that one big mistake I made where I had to end up swapping the tiles. This Hinox warp takes the most time to retry because you have to throw the pot against the wall. But who cares about how long it takes to retry when you can just hit it first try? So yeah. Only 4 total failed Hinox warps, and it was all on one of them. Just a little bit silly, but otherwise this was a really good Dampe. I actually ended up losing 1.5 minutes to my PB's page 3 here, because it was a gold, it hit both of them first try, and the building was much better. I don't think 4 retries loses 1.5 minutes. I think most of that time was actually from the building. Which, oh well, whatever. It's the end of the run. We have completed Link's Awakening 100% almost. We still got a little bit left to do. And that menuing mistake there made me really nervous that I was going to miss the 251. But we'll see. Should still be close. I've already timed it, so I already know. But here we go. We get our final reward. We've collected all 50 seashells, collected all 32 heart pieces, all 9 heart containers, all 14 chamber stones. Now we're redeeming our, all 13 chamber stones, And now we're redeeming our final reward. What do we get for 50 seashells? A 14th chamber stone. Yay. Okay, so that says 251.56. Oh, shoot. There's me talking in the VOD. Yeah, thank you for watching. Yeah, so I got 251.57.1 in my actual timing. Another silly thing about this run is that my splits just disappeared during it for some reason. Just live split like glitched out and got rid of my splits. I tried to get them back during the run multiple times, but it just didn't work. But yeah, thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Shoutouts to all of the Link's Awakening community. But big shoutouts to EDL and Snowmiser. They did quite a bit of work on 100%, and I definitely would not be as good as I am without them. I know EDL says that she personally isn't a big fan of the category, just because, you know, it's just really not for her, but she really put her all into the couple of runs that she wanted to do. And Snowmiser for being my pal. I don't know. That's about it from me. I really appreciate you watching at home. I hope you enjoyed this video. And yeah, that's 100% of Link's Awakening complete. Farewell.